Welcome to American Roots. My name is Jessica. Living here in Arizona is our garden is toast right now, and for some reason I just feel like there's a lot of things that I've got to pay attention to. So we're gonna go through and do a little garden cleanup today. Let me give you an example of one of the things that I'm talking about. Now, normally tomatoes will, if they're indeterminate, they'll last until you keep them going. I will tell you that this one just got fried, and it's so devastating because this one was absolutely amazing. And I've gotten gallons and gallons of tomatoes off of this plant, and then it's on a drip system, so it's getting water. We're actually watering 3 times a day, so it's getting a lot of water. But it's funny, look what's happening. So you've got this little sprig of green in the middle of all this dead. So I just have to make some decisions, cut it back. The sun was just way too hot, and you know how I can tell is by looking at the fruit. I mean, it actually looks like it got burned. It's crazy. This tomato actually, it's just insane. I've never had this experience. And here's the other way you know that it's being watered. The marigolds are totally alive down there and thriving. So I'm gonna have to cut this back and figure out what I'm gonna do with this. But here's a little blackberry volunteer. I need to see, everything has kind of dead leaves on it, but then all this flourishing green. So I've got some garden maintenance for sure. This bed, the bottom completely fell out, so Joe had to repair it, and the stuff that's around it is just absolutely needing to be pulled out. I just really need to clean it up. It has been on average about 115 here, and that is just too hot to come out here and do anything. And that's where all of this shade really comes in handy. This is on my south wall, and so the sun comes up over and just beats on all of this area all day. So this shade really helps. These trees have grown exponentially since we've been here. I actually had one of them in the middle die. There was 3 right there. One of them died. We removed the stump. Sissy, get out of the strawberries. Thank you. So this actually, if you recall, I cut the celery back, and I didn't want to dig up the root, so I just cut it back, and looks like there's more celery growing out of that. This is an onion that I planted, and I looked, and it actually looks like it's doing rather well. I'm experimenting with companion planting. I'm really researching and trying to find out what goes well. And I'll tell you, my onions have done really well. But see, even the strawberries are struggling. This bed has so much moisture in it. And mulch, and I still have areas where the leaves are getting burned. And it's not all over the plant, you can just tell. I mean, the cucamelon, the same thing. So I think some pruning is in order. This is the strawberries we transplanted the other day. They're really doing well. So the other issue I've had this year, and I don't know why I've had this issue. And maybe if you've had the same issue in your garden, put in the comment section down below, maybe a general region of where you are and what your issue was with cucumbers. My mom and myself, I started these from seed, and they are so bitter, there's no eating them. And I know, like, oh, it's hot, it's whatever. We've always grown cucumbers in the summer, never had an issue. Last year we had such a bounty of cucumbers, we almost didn't know what to do with them. This year I can't get one that isn't so bitter I can't get it off my tongue fast enough. I don't know what it is. So I think I'm gonna get rid of the cucumbers. I could leave them and maybe see, I mean, they've made it this far, if maybe a cooler crop is better. Maybe if it gives me, I mean, there are tons of flowers on it. It's not as if it's not doing well. It seemed like for the most part, I was able to get any issues underway. This leaf is crispy. That is crispy. That feels like it's gotten sun damage, but it's not all over the entire plant. My corn has been very weird. Yes, this is the second year I've grown it, and I've happened to get way more corn this year than previous years. It's just strange. The one I did have to harvest was the very first one that germinated. I had a real issue with germination this year as well. My okra didn't sprout. My corn didn't sprout. I had a couple of things really give me some issue when it came to germinating seed. Now, I did a little research on why the crookneck squash is bumpy. And from what I can read, there's two things that will make it that way. One of is either a soil bug. The other, and I keep finding these bugs.
They're like striped and weird.
I need to look those up. But it said it either has a virus or it has a weird beetle. And you know, I'm gonna have to say, I think it's that weird beetle. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this plant because the more that I look at it, the more that I'm seeing damage, bugs, things, disease that I don't want. I am going to pull this plant today. That's on the to-do list. The watermelon, they're looking great. I think since Joe had that one crack, he's being very careful on how much water he gives them. Everything's just looking very in need of pruning. I've not pruned these flowers because of the birds, but it looks like they have gleaned pretty much anything that there is to glean. So I think I could cut the tops and leave any other flowers. So I've got some pruning in the sunflower bed. It's just everywhere. I feel like everywhere in the garden needs some help. I just don't, I'm like almost overwhelmed. So rather than be overwhelmed, I'm just gonna take it one bed at a time. There is no sense in getting myself so frustrated with something that I love that I don't even want to come out here anymore. The heat has just kind of gone over everything. The heat has made it so that things that would normally do really well just seem to really be struggling, and I don't know what it is on why it seems so absolutely intense this year. I was born and raised here, so I'm very used to the weather. This isn't like something that's like, yeah, you're new though. No, I've lived here my whole life, and so this heat just seems like almost unbearable, and my plants are just kind of striving to survive right now. This week we're supposed to have a drop in temperature. It's supposed to be about lower 100s, so like 103 instead of 115. So that 12 degrees does make a difference, but it's still like this very, very hot sun. So before the sun starts coming up over the house, I'm gonna just start working and doing one thing at a time. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. It's been coming out looking like this. And it just is disgusting looking when you're not growing like winter squash, and they should look like that. To look like this is just very like, ooh, I don't know about that, especially when you're used to really smooth skin squash. So I started doing a little bit of research and found out that it could be a virus or a beetle. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the plant and get rid of it and put it in a garbage bag. So that's what we're gonna start on. When you're a new gardener and you don't really know, it's really hard to know when there's something wrong. And with this bed, I think I may have harvested 2 or 3 squash off of it before I started noticing there was an issue. Now, the virus that the squash, if it had a virus, it wouldn't have been harmful to humans, but it can be a detriment to the other plants in the garden. I think it's melons, cucumbers, squash, and zucchini plants are all susceptible. Now this plant, it doesn't really have an issue with disease. I think it got really hot. Tomatoes don't like over 90 degrees, and when it's 115 consistently, they're just not happy. So since there's no disease on this plant, it was just burned, I'm gonna cut it and it can go in the compost. So you can see I was able to cut away quite a bit. I got a few steaks out of there, a bunch of ties. So I'm just gonna keep working. The sun is starting to come up over the fence and it is hot. So I'm gonna work as quick as I can to get this underway. And marigolds are still going, so I think it just got too hot in there. It's hot right now. It's not even 8 o'clock in the morning yet. I was able to get the tomatoes done and get that crookneck squash plant out. The way that gardening works, kind of anywhere where it's really, really hot, but especially in Arizona, the earlier start, the better. And you have to work in increments. There are only so many things you can do before you get overheated. You have to stay hydrated, drink lots of water, and make sure you take little breaks. Like we work until we get too hot and then we come in, and you have to do it without conviction. You just have to learn to multitask and roll with the punches and do the next thing inside. And then when you're done, you kind of have to squirrel and go back out into the backyard for 5 minutes till you get too hot. Then you gotta kind of squirrel and you gotta go back inside and you gotta work for a little bit till you get cooled off. And that's just the way it has to be. And that's why summer gardening can be so exhausting and slow to roll. If there's things that need to get done, like I said, without conviction, I just let them do what they need to do so that I can do what I need to do. Taking care of myself is so important. And if I overexhaust myself with the heat, then I'm no good. I have to take a nap. I don't want to do anything else. And your appetite is also suppressed. So, you know, there's a lot to be said about just making sure that you take care of yourself, stay hydrated, and get shade when you need to. So right now I'm gonna go take a break and I'll bring you back out when it's time to get started again. Okay, I got cooled off. That was really, really hot. I think what I'm gonna work on for the few minutes that I have left, you can tell it's already increasing. The high for today is like 112. So the last thing I'm gonna work on before I go in for the afternoon, I'm gonna try to cut off some of these sunflower tops that just need to be cut back. So that won't take me too long. I don't see myself getting too overexhausted. And then that is 3 major things I needed to get done today in the garden, and kind of takes away that overwhelming feeling that I had this morning when I came out here to look back and say, well, I got the tomatoes cut back. I took out that diseased crookneck squash plant, and I deadheaded the sunflowers. Those are 3 big tasks, and I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this done so I can get back inside. that is gonna do it for me today in this heat. There is a cool breeze right now, but I'm just feeling so hot. There's a couple flowers I didn't get to, but I think for the most part what I did is I left anything that looked like it might be blooming or it is already bloomed. Now, one thing I do like is that sunflowers kind of, if you deadhead them, I'll come over here and show you, they will grow more. So I've got these little flowers, and at first, my first year, I cut all the armpits. I was so worried they were gonna take away from the major blossom, but unless you're growing just one sunflower like I am right here, I've kind of learned my lesson that one sunflower in a bed will allow it. I mean, look at the stalk. This thing is getting mammoth. It's gonna be wonderful. And it is starting, I can see inside of there, it is starting to get the head forming on it, and so that's super exciting. I can already see flowers forming in the armpits. So unless you're growing them like that, every single one of these sunflowers was volunteer this year, except for this one I planted intentionally. The other ones I planted, I think the birds got to, but every other sunflower, and we planted those together, the ones that I think the birds got to. Otherwise, everything is a volunteer from last year. Even the, Sisma's here, somebody. Even the sunflowers that were on the other side of the house, the really pretty ones that are on our Instagram page, those were volunteers from last year too. Those are called, I think, a Velvet Queen. But anyway, so that's gonna do it for me today in the garden. If I feel a little bit better, maybe a little later, I'll come out here, but I've got chores to do. I've got stuff to get going. So school's getting ready to start, lesson plans, all that fun stuff. So thanks for taking the time to hang out with me today. Learn about how Arizona gardeners tuck and roll when it's hot. We pray that, you're taking care of yourself right now. You're not allowing fear to rule, and that you are looking to the face of God right now. He is calling back his people, and he just wants a little bit of time with you. So if you spend that time with him, his word doesn't return void. So reach out, pray for somebody that you know, pray for anybody. When you open up that line of communication, you'll be surprised how much will change. So take care of yourself right now. Keep your eye on Christ. And from our family to yours, God bless you.